Okay, so a couple of these pieces are salvageable, so we're going to use them, save the customers just a little bit of money. I'm going to go ahead and make my cuts for the very small end pieces and sand it down just to get everything off of the outside, and go ahead and get these installed and then make my other cuts as needed. Now all of the corners, they're going to be set at 90-degree angles. So on my saw, I'm going to adjust the blade. Sorry, 45 degree. I'm going to be cutting my angle. Also on this side, for the piece of siding, the measurements got to be cut out of the board to go ahead and fit the siding that's already on the house. So on the end, my measurements are correct. There's one piece of wood right here that's sticking out, causing the small piece that I have cut to not sit flush. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that and go ahead and install it. I'm going to use my multi-tool for this job. Okay, when splicing in your fascia, there's a couple ways to do it. One is you can join them in at the end of a rafter tail. The second one, I'm going to go ahead and show you real quick. It's tie a 2x4 in between the two rafter tails, form a joint on the end, and then you can attach your joint for your fascia right there. So that's what we're going to do. Now I've got a good solid platform to go ahead and install the fascia piece. Thing that I did real quick, I just ran a screw to where I could see the tops where the rafters are at. That way I can go ahead and just mark a straight line real quick. It's handy to do, especially when you're working by yourself. That way when you secure your board flush, there's no guessing. All you gotta do is just run some screws. All right. Alright, so one thing that I've kind of wanted to try for a while is using Bondo or body filler as a filler on seams and other things. The thing about using the Bondo is you have to have a clean surface. Everything's been sanded down, scraped off. We're just going to use it to fill in the seams. So the way you do it is you have the Bondo and then you have the hardener, and as you mix it together it'll start to change consistency. You don't want to mix it too long or else it'll set right up. All I'm using is a scrap piece of 2x4, or sorry, 1x6. I'm going to go ahead and mix it up until I get the consistency I want, and then we're going to go ahead and apply it. And as we're mixing it, you'll notice it starts to change a little bit of consistency. You don't want to sit and wait terribly long, because the hardener will actually set up on Bondo and it'll become too thick to even apply. I'm going to go ahead, won't have time to track it with the camera, but I'm going to go ahead and get everything filled in. Once I get it filled in, I'm going to let it dry for a few minutes and then I'll come back and sand it down. Alright, so I've got my seams filled in, I've got the screw holes filled in. I used the Bondo on the big seams. It seemed to work well. I'm getting ready to sand it out, and we'll see what it's like when it's done. I just used regular wood filler, plastic wood filler for the screw holes. They're still setting up. You can tell it's fully ready to sand. It goes on pink, but when it dries a wood color. I'm going to be using my random orbital sander, just regular old 80 grit sandpaper. We're going to get it sanded down and ready to prime and paint. So I've got all my seams filled in, my screw holes filled in. Got a couple spots that I went back and hit again with wood filler. They're still drying, so I'll have to sand those down again. I really like how this Bondo turned out. It filled the seam entirely. I got a little bit of touch-up sanding to do, a couple spots on it, but other than that, I mean, it's good. Got to sand that down when it's finally dried. I went back and filled it in. Seams on the corners. Sand it. But most everything is done and ready for a coat of primer. So my next step, other than the sanding, is going to be to get a damp rag and just go back through and wipe off all the dust before I start adding primer.